Hi, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to you also.
Are you ready for this 2024 thing?
We have no choice. We're just going to have to take whatever comes our way.
And Happy New Year to all of you, and welcome once again to Two Guys Talking About Records, a Vinyl Community podcast. We are back at it for 2024. My name is Jim, and I am a record store owner.
And I am Steve, a record collector.
You know what? We took a couple of weeks off. It felt good. I think our voices and health are back after that, but going around, whatever's going around.
Exactly. And we hit the gym. We're buffed up. We look good. Oh, my God. Yes. It was an amazing 2 weeks.
I hit the gym, and then I turned around.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
I punched it hard.
So today, for our first show of 2024, the first episode kind of kicking things off, we're going to do another one of those potpourri episodes. Does that sound good to you?
It sounds fantastic.
There's a lot of stuff to cover, even in the few weeks that we were down, but just a lot of stuff in general, both news-wise and just vinyl-wise happening and going to be happening throughout this year.
Yeah, it's get ready, buckle up. It's going to be some more wild stuff coming your way.
It's going to be a wild one, like you say.
Yep.
But first, because we haven't spoken in a couple of weeks, I think that we both have a lot of pickups to talk about, because this is a vinyl community and the VC loves showing off their acquisitions.
Yes.
So what do you have that tops your list in the past couple of weeks?
All right, well, it's cut way down because there was a lot that came in, and not one was given to me for Christmas, so I've yet to get a record. Well, the only record album I ever got for Christmas was when my kids got a hold of you, and you gave them some Dead Kennedys for Christmas. I'm at my mother's place, she's like 90, and what you got? The Dead Kennedys, Mom. Well, she is a staunch Republican, so she handled it okay. But
that wasn't this year. That was a year or two ago.
Yeah, it was. That was a few years back. So the first one, actually the very first new album of the year, which I talked about on my video today, is The First Boy on the Moon. They put out their second album and was dropped on January 1st, and it's called Cyber Girl. Mm-hmm. And it's a group out of Sweden, though the lead singer's from California. He just married a Swedish lady and found it was easier for musicians to get work in Sweden, doing a lot of different things. But he's a graphic designer. And so it is just their first album's one of my all-time favorite albums, quite honestly. And it's just called First Boy on the Moon. This one, Cyber Girl, it's very poppy. There's lots of good hooks in there. It's, kind of an 80s type feel, but yet the topics are a lot deeper and darker as he looks at things, because it was written during the pandemic, where everybody was kind of thinking about the world's going to hell.
Deeper and darker time.
Yes, it was. So I'm really excited to get that, to have that album. So that's exciting. One of the people that watch my videos, he suggested this comp. It's called In the Light of Time, UK post-rock and left field pop from 92 to 98.
Interesting.
Oh, it's good. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just these groups I have no idea about. And it is so, I love it. It's, he hit the nail on the head when he said, I think you would like this. I was showing my other comps, the
shoegaze.
Yeah, the shoegaze, and I had the Jangle Pop comp, and he goes, you need to try this one. So once again, someone watching my videos made me spend more money. Not my fault. I just picked up Gary Newman. 2012, he put out an album, Splinter. I used to have on CD, but lost it. So I found it in a record store, not the cheapest thing, but it's Gary Newman in dark wave. I mean, this thing is
his
dark.
Later stuff was...
and this is darker than most. I remember that when I bought the CD and go, wow, he seems to be in a real downer. I mean, it is, but it was great to see that and to listen to that again. So Gary Newman's still putting out stuff. And the final one I'll just talk about is a group from Spain called Sex Museum. And the name of the album is their first album, Fuzz Face, that came out in 1987. This is a 2016 reissue. It is garage rock.
Okay.
It is just garage rock done the right way, Spanish style. And, I have found so much good garage rock from Mexico and from Spain. They continued, some of this stuff is good. I think most of it is sung in English, but it's beautiful. And that group is still putting out albums, though they've moved more toward a 70s hard rock style. But the first few albums dealt with this garage rock feel, the 80s revival.
Yeah.
And so it fit in perfectly. So Sex Museum.
Interesting stuff.
Yep.
Keeps you going, and it's only the first week.
Yeah, yes.
We did need to catch up a little bit, the whole end of December stuff. But
what about you?
Well, things were busy at the store, so I kind of slacked off a little bit. But as we have gone through the holiday and into January, they've slowed down a little bit, and I have begun to try to get back to catch up as far as the store stock goes. And in that, I find some things that I had set aside. I'm like, okay, yes, now I'm adding into this. But there were a few other legit pickups too, and I'll start with, we talked before about me trying to decide if I'm going to be a completist with They Might Be Giants, and I think I'm headed that way because I picked up a newly reissued version of their album Why. That one originally came out, I have to go back to my notes here, originally released in 2015, so it's a later one that they just reissued last year in November. And this is more of a children's album, and TMBG has actually put out specific albums for children at one point in their career, and this one falls into that. So it's one that I picked up, and it's part of their colored vinyl reissue series. Okay. I don't think I'm ever really going to play it much because it's a kid's record until I end up getting grandkids someday, maybe.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I'll hold on to it because I think I want to go that route for the completist.
I guess
They Might Be Giants. So that's it. We'll see what happens. Secondly, and this was kind of a blind buy through one of my distributors, and you got a copy of this too, was the Ducks Limited. Previously, the group was known as Ducks Unlimited. Maybe they got sued by the conservationist organization. But Ducks Limited, a Canadian group, and their EP album, Get Bleak.
Yeah.
Jangle pop, like the jangle poppiest jangle pop, or is it the jangliest pop?
Very jangly.
But you had that on your Sunday video today as well, which was kind of cool. And you're right, it's a very dark album, but they disguise the lyrics with this la 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 jangle pop.
It is so good. It is wonderful jangle pop, and it's new, just a couple years old, and this was the expanded edition. It was a wonderful album.
And as you mentioned, they've got a new album coming out here in a little bit, so I'm probably going to jump on that one because I really enjoyed this.
And that way you can be a completist.
Yeah, for Ducks Limited. So yeah, Get Bleak was the other pickup. Others were on the vintage side. I've had a copy of the London Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Kent Nagano, doing Frank Zappa music, a volume 1 of that. For years I've had that, and I'll put that on once in a while. It's it's more digestible Zappa, if you will, done by an orchestra, the London Symphony Orchestra in this case. Well, I found a volume 2 of this, and it's just as good as the other one. Long form Zappa orchestral, and it's interesting to listen to his music from that perspective because he's got this level of orchestration throughout his stuff. Anyhow,
he does.
This just seems a little more coherent. Does that make sense?
It does, though it always kind of scares you when we label it as digestible.
Yes. Yes.
Your normal person can handle this Frank Zappa album.
Yeah, we'll have to do a deep dive into Zappa because there are some Zappa albums that I absolutely love. I adore them, and others I'm scratching my head going, yeah, I don't get this.
Yeah.
One other one, I had to place a Discogs order for a customer, and it was a $2 or $3 record they had to have. So I do that from time to time for folks. I'll buy Discogs because they either don't want to, or they can't be there for shipping, or they just don't feel comfortable enough searching through to find the right item on Discogs. So I'll pick stuff up. And I found out that this buyer had a minimum buy. So it's like, well, if I get this, I got to get something else in order to get this. And I found a compilation album from WLLZ in Detroit. They would put out these compilation Motor City Rocks albums from the 80s. I've got a couple of these with some real great 80s rock from the Detroit area. Didn't realize it, but there was a Motor City Rocks 2022 comp put out by WLLZ, which is no longer at that spot on the dial where I remember. They're at 106.7 now. And it's got some cool stuff on there from Sponge. Seduce is on here, Artificial Agent, and Toby Red, amongst many others. Some other Detroit groups I have not heard of, but some very cool, just straight up Detroit rock, a more modern side. So I've got that comp that came in as well.
Nice.
And then finally, I don't collect 45s. I say that, yet I have some 45s. I think you're in the same boat. If it's something important and special, I'll get a 45. I'll get a 7-inch. Well, the odd things in it, we'll have to have another discussion someday about the odd things that come into record stores. The first week of January, and this has been the case for the past several years, I get people coming in with totes full of records. I'm clean and I got to get rid of this, like a post-holiday thing. And it could be that during the months of November and December, I push all these people back and say, we're too busy. Come back in January. Well, they're coming back in January. So somebody showed up with a tote full of records and they said, here, I don't want them. And I looked at them and said, I really can't pay you anything for them. It's all, Bert Kaempfer, Mitch Miller, that kind of stuff, living strings. So in and amongst all of this, the Pete Fountain stuff, the big band and classical, easy listening stuff, all of this stuff that sits in our dollar room, I'm going through it after the person left, and out of nowhere is a 7-inch of the Dead Milkmen's Punk Rock Girl in with all of this other weirdness. And I'm like, you scratch your head. It's like, how did this record end up in this with the living strings? Out of all of that weird stuff, here's a Dead Milkmen punk record, from 1986, and it's no slouch. It's worth a little, not a tremendous amount, but I feel kind of bad because I'm like, I can't pay you for this, and then I find something I'm keeping in there. So But the Punk Rock Girl is an important song for me from the Dead Milkmen because that harkens back to my college radio days, and so it's just, it feels kind of odd to have found that in this crate of nothing.
There it is. It's like that one gem. It was like that Sullivan album. Someone gave me a box of records. And Sullivan album suddenly was in there. That's worth a lot of money in all this crap. You never know.
You never know. That could be a thing for another one down the line. So those are the pickups. There's probably a few more. We'll get to those in the next couple of weeks because I'm still going through a few things as well. But it's still busy at the store, but I'm feeling like I'm catching up after the holidays now. So being that this is the new year, I'm still trying to get used to 2024, saying that and writing it as it is. It's usually a time of year when folks go through and say, I'm going to do some New Year's resolutions. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to be healthier. What do vinyl collectors say for New Year's resolutions?
Well, I'm not going to spend as much on records this year because I spent too much last year, and I'm going to cut back.
Says the guy who less than a week in had a list too long of pickups.
Yes, I went to a record store when I was in Detroit. Wasn't going to, but I'm just going to go in. But I'm going to prove to myself that I can go in, do a film, spend $25 and walk out. Times that by 5 or so. It didn't work out very well for me whatsoever. But now I got it out of my system, so now I'm going to save some money.
So now your resolution is from this point forward, I'm going to be good about spending it. And I've never been big on resolutions on the other side. If I'm gonna try to eat healthier or exercise, I'm just going to do it. I'm not looking for a magical date on the calendar to tell me go like this and be like that. But it's as good as time and any to continually try to improve oneself. Resolution-wise, on the vinyl side, I can't really think of anything that would affect me as a collector. But, as a record store owner, I want to continue to try to bring in quality stuff for our customers. While at the same time, I think I'm convincing myself that I need to be a little bit more selective because I'm getting so much junk coming in. I'm trying to be very tactful when I say this. I had somebody contact me before Christmas, and I've got a bunch of classical music. So my standard line is, classical doesn't sell. I will look at it, but I cannot promise you, and I probably can't pay you for it as well. So he goes, oh, no, I got several hundred. I'll bring them in. If you want them, you can have them. Dropped them off last week. They were full of mold, and the majority of them have to go to our storage unit till I can decide what to do with them, but I think they're too far gone. So one of the things I'm going to really strive for is to be a little bit more selective as far as what I say. Just come on in and drop it off here at the store because I really don't have the time nor energy to deal with someone else's stuff that probably should hit a landfill.
But there could be a punk rock girl in there.
But there could be, damn it. That's why I have to look at them.
I know, exactly.
So I guess I've broken that one just like you did.
Yep.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
No problem. Glad. Short-term memory there, Jim.
Thanks, because that's exactly. But the stuff that was in the other one was at least saleable in the dollar bin.
Okay.
It wasn't stuff that I literally had to put the gloves on as I went through that other stuff. It's like, I can't deal with this. So short of resolutions that we really have no intention of keeping,
yes.
The other thing that seems to go with first of the year shows and episodes are what kind of predictions. And so now we can look forward to say, what kind of predictions do you see for the vinyl collecting or vinyl sales industry heading into this new year?
Yeah. I think one of the things I see is there is going to be more of a divide within collecting. The audiophile group, it's gotten a lot larger. As people have more disposable income, more people have moved up into this wanting these audiophiles, which you can see through the amount of audiophile pressings that have been coming out. There's a large batch of collectors that can't go that route, for income reasons, or just they don't want to spend, was it Steely Dan, like $150 for that? I mean, it's hard to justify, but if you have that kind of income, it's wonderful, and you can get it. You can say, look how much it's worth. Well, someone has to buy it first. Of course, we can say anything's worth a lot, but I see the audiophile will continue to grow as there is a definite market there. Maybe they'll make it a little bit more limited. Because, they were just releasing stuff like crazy. Yeah. And then you would find it on clearance and stuff like that, as they couldn't get rid of them all. So, but if you limit it, you can raise the prices more too.
The idea of this divide between, and let's not even call them collectors at one end, we'll just say maybe music lovers who want to get into this a little bit, not necessarily as a collector. I think that the labels are recognizing this. And I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into this later on in this episode because I do have some other info that I think leads directly to this prediction of yours that this divide will continue to grow.
Yeah. Yes, I think so. And, it's just there's so much stuff, especially when you look at, the reissue market. We're going to 1974 now. Yeah. And, think of the classic albums. But, last year, it's just the amount of reissues was incredible that they came out with. And, with, the Beatles' Red and Blue album, reissued. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon for the 1,000th time, though they reissue that every year. The Who's Next was a huge reissue. And then, you had like Snoop Dogg's, Doggy Style was 30 years old.
Yep.
Got an expanded version. Alicia Keys' Diary of Alicia Keys was 20 years old. Expanded version comes out. Sound of Music.
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah.
Super deluxe. Well, that's 50, 60 years old. Expanded with
4 LP set.
Yeah, 4 LP set of Sound of Music. But for those that like it, you get the orchestration on there. ABBA, The Visitors. They called it the 40 year. It came out in 81, but they called it belated. It's a belated 40th anniversary. But there is such a market for this because that's the baby boomers. I loved that album back then, and, I want to rebuy it. I was kidding on one of my broadcasts. I said, well, Bachman Turner Overdrive's Not Fragile is going to be, coming up to 50 years or 40 years, and I want a 10-album box set of that baby.
Be careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
You mentioned the Beatles' Red and Blue albums, and this, I think, is going to, again, take us further in this discussion about price points on some of these reissues that we're going to be seeing. The Red and Blue albums that came out in late November, December, the reissues of the Beatles, along with that AI Lennon tune, or AI John Lennon in that, those things listed for $75 a piece. They were triple albums, so if you break it down and say, okay, well, in that case, it makes them affordable. But as a package, that was not something that was very attractive to people. And I bought those, and I think I had a couple copies of each here in the store, and they sat, and they made it through the Christmas season with barely anybody even picking them up to look at them. And I think that the $75 price point regardless of the fact that there were 6 records between the 2 sets, 3 each, $150 for 6 records if you want both, was something that scared a lot of people off.
Yeah, well, and you think, so $25 a record, but this was not new music. This is just reissued music, so you're not paying, anything, you're not getting something brand new out of it. So it should be cheaper.
In late December of every year, I get a little bug up my backside, and I decide I'm going to try to flush out some new vinyl clearance in December between Christmas and New Year when we do have a lot of shoppers come in. And after watching those Beatles records sit on our shelves throughout the busy holiday season, I went, you know what, I'm not going to risk it. I marked them down to cost, which was $60 some odd, about $60. They were gone within 2 days.
Yeah.
So here you have just a matter of $15 a record that made people decide, okay, now it's worth it, versus that extra 15 for them saying no. I found that very interesting to see. And it wasn't just the Beatles. There was a lot of other new vinyl releases and reissues that I did that with, and I marked them down by $5 or $10, $15, and that seemed to make a big difference to a lot of people.
It does. Well, we all like a sale, and after Christmas, it's all about that after Christmas sale. I got some extra money in that, and you come in and you see something. I mean, how many people run to, no matter what store you go to a bargain bins. You look at even at record stores. Oh, they got a clearance bin. Everybody hits that thing, and it's a deal. Look at that. It's marked down.
Did what I could to do most at cost, but there was even a few that I'm like, I'm sick of looking at this record.
Yeah.
It's gone. Ozark Mountain Boys, or Ozark Mountain Daredevils. That one's, I think I put $7 on it, and finally somebody went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, wow. But yeah, a $27, $28 price point for something that's been rehashed is not feasible. And I'm really afraid that the industry's not going to learn their lesson on this in 24.
I agree. I don't see that happening. It comes down to the bottom line. I mean, that's all they're going to look at. If they sold enough to stores, because it doesn't matter if you sell it, it just matters if you bought it from them.
Yep.
And so if enough stores are still buying all that and they're not gun shy on it, it's going to keep happening.
This discussion we're going to have about this divide, I want to come back to that very topic about whether we're going to buy them, because I guess I can count that as a resolution, because I'm not going to jump in on some of these high dollar ones unless someone orders them.
Yeah. Well, it's, you have your market, and you know your market, and every market has a price point, and it's vulnerable, and it hits that certain price, and people shy away unless you get someone like me that comes in, oh, well, how much is that? Okay, I'll buy that, and away I go. But for the most part, people don't want that, because they're not collectors, as you said, they're music lovers.
Yep. So let's move on, if we could, into this news item that ties directly into this divide, if I could, please. Yeah. There was an article that our producer kicked out for me. Let's thank Kim for this. This comes from The Guardian UK, the Guardian website, newspaper in the UK. And the headline of the article is, "Vinyl is back for good, and that is exciting. Just don't let the greed of the big labels ruin it." So the author of this, John Harris, goes on to talk about how, everybody's talking vinyl resurgence. And the thought was that this is a fad. This is not going to be something that catches with the younger generation enough to sustain this type of revival. Mm-hmm. But I guess the sales information is in now over the past several years, and they're saying that while vinyl cannot, and there's no way that it can compete with the likes of TikTok, YouTube as far as music streaming, and Spotify, and the other streaming services, those are far and above, bigger moneymakers than vinyl. But the fact that vinyl held in there and continued to sell and continued to increase sales over the past few years, while the other physical formats, CDs in particular, CDs and downloads have both just dropped off to nothing. Yeah. They say that this is now enough evidence to show that this vinyl resurgence is no longer a resurgence. It's something that is here to stay. So the author is, kicking in a lot of different sales figures and, interviews talking about why this is happening and why it's good to stay, but then does go into the fact that they're pushing up costs. The telling thing here is that he says that now that new pressing plants have finally been made, factories have grown, vinyl producing startups have opened all over the world, But he says the problem, as he sees it, is that the music industry stokes demand for records. The current examples of hyped up limited edition and color pressings, which really there's nothing wrong with. But the total capacity of vinyl manufacturing still, despite all of this infrastructure improvements, lags far behind. And that has played a part in pushing up the costs of these, is that demand is still outpacing the ability to produce. So, but the demand, as you and I have talked about, is being created by the labels looking at these older portions of their catalog as cash cows.
Yeah.
Something they don't have to invest a lot of money in to kick out expanded editions or anniversary editions or color variants to try to make an extra buck or two on something that they've owned for 50 years.
And I'd read it is harder on new artists to break because the
very much
record
so, yeah.
companies are focused upon that. The one thing I would be interested to know was, okay, so we talk sales. So if I raise my prices by 20% or so, I should have a natural, increase in sales. Units is where I would really like to see this go. What's the percent increase of units sold of that, which I think is more telling than the sales figures.
Well, the units, you could say, I sold 4 Beatles albums over this, but what was the cost of that? It's exactly what you're saying on that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think as a business person, which I'm not naturally inclined to do. It's just a record collector who happens to own the store, so I'm not quite in tune with that whole business acumen side of things.
Yeah. But that's how, when you look at inventory, it has to be that way because, some of these prices have been inflated so much. Again, we'll go back to Steely Dan, that $150. Well, that's a lot of sales. If you have 1,000 of them, that's a ton. They're going to boost it up if we didn't have that last year, that sales figure, but overall units. Now, the units could be way up, and that's fantastic because to me, that really shows if the units are up, it is growing.
Yep.
If the units are down, we're just paying a lot more.
Well, now there is a couple of signs to me that point to the industry recognizing this. And let's go back to the latter part of last year and into this year. Rhino Records, which is, by the way, a subsidiary of Warner Music Group, has introduced this new line of greatest hits compilation albums for artists that are in their catalog. Now, last year there was Rat, and I think there was a Dokken. I've got a Gordon Lightfoot here. These are called the Now Playing series coming from Rhino. And what's very interesting about this is once you get a few of these releases and you're looking at them, there's something very familiar. Now, This past week we had some come out from Foghat and America, and I'm going to do something that we shouldn't do in the audio side of things, but I'm going to hand Steve copies of these. You tell me what you see when you look at these albums by Foghat, America, and Gordon Lightfoot from the Rhino Now Playing series.
Yeah. Well, first off, the photography that they use is not what was used on the original greatest hits type albums. But when you look at the back, it is very much, it is like a...
it's a template.
Yeah, it is. It's a template. They have the exact same kind of swirly designs, and then where it tells what is being played, what is on here, it's exactly the same, but they did change the words to match Foghat or America.
Correct, and the colors have changed, but basically it's a cut and paste template for these. Now, what that means, though, is that Rhino can churn these things out and sell them for a suggested price of $19.95 per record, $20 a record, which is a very, very palatable amount for collectors getting into it.
Yep. And for a music lover, this is perfect.
Yeah,
it's finally, we have a price point that is less than what it's been in a number of years. If you're, as a collector, it's not so much for me because I want, the original artwork and things like that. But for you as an owner, that's perfect.
And to be said, these are not reissues of greatest hits albums. They are new alignments of the songs. They may be a little bit in there, but when you take a group like Foghat or a group like America, you've got a limited well of legitimate hits that you're going to put on there. It's going to be on any greatest hits that you have on there from those older groups. But I just find it interesting too when you look at these, the design of the artwork is exactly the same except for the color schemes and the cover photos.
Yeah.
And there are more of these yet to come. I'm looking through my distributor list and some of these now playings that have been announced, and again, these all have that exact same layout of the artwork. Now playing from Zapp and Roger, Curtis Mayfield, Wilson Pickett, Ray Charles is forthcoming. Otis Redding, there's an Eddie Rabbit that's out that we mentioned already. Judy Collins already came out. So this, I think, is a good trend for the music lover, as you said. That $20 price point, I think, is something that's going to sell a lot of units.
Yes, absolutely, it will. And the record company makes a lot of money still because it's very inexpensive to do.
Very. They own the catalog. And they don't have to spend a lot on graphic arts.
I bet it's not colored vinyl, though.
Oh. No, they are.
They are?
They put out a black vinyl version and colored vinyl version.
How
Green
about that?
vinyl, tan vinyl.
It does say that. Okay.
So some of them are, some of them aren't. I think the limited runs are the color vinyl, and then they'll just keep churning out black vinyl as they need to do so. Now, the opposite side of this, and I'm talking polar opposite side of this, where you get a company like Rhino, which is Warner, saying we're going to churn out these very low-cost albums to try to keep people buying them and keep them in the mood of buying, is something like Atlantic Records. Mm-hmm. And they have got a 75th anniversary coming up. This actually started last year. Yeah. And most of the titles are now kind of coming into play this year, but they did start last year with some clear vinyl reissues of things like Led Zeppelin 4 and several other ones. But now they are kicking this into gear for their 75th with 75 re-releases from the Atlantic catalog being done by Analog Productions. So this is the MoFi level of collectability. But here is where it gets really scary for me. I think as a record store owner, there's some titles that I think I'd like to have. But now, we have some that have been announced, and my distributor puts a placeholder date on these of 2050, meaning that they don't have the release date, but it will be sometime in the next 4 or 5 months. Mm-hmm. We get Boz Scaggs, self-titled. List price of $74. Roberta Flack, Killing Me Softly, list price of $74.
It's just reissued.
Yeah, Daylight Again from Crosby, Stills, and Nash, $74 list price. Genesis, Trick of the Tail, T-Bone Walker, T-Bone Blues, John Coltrane's Sound, Velvet Underground Loaded is on here. Dusty Springfield in Memphis. All of these with a price point of $74, but it gets an Analog production. What's more is that they're divvying these up now into double LP versions set at 45 RPM for high quality audio. Now, I think that I did learn my lesson on those Beatles albums, and granted they were triple LPs, but now you're saying, okay, this is a high quality analog production, audiophile vinyl, double LP at 45 RPM. You're not going to hear a better sounding quality of Boz Scaggs' self-titled album, but you got to pay $74 for it.
And it really depends on what kind of stereo system you have.
Oh, yeah, and your hearing capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, for most of us, we have, good stereo systems, but they're not that audiophile quality where you could sit back and you can just go, that's just amazing. Yeah. And so, to me, some of those, again, I can find in bargain bins, for $5. They might have a few pops and ticks, but wow, 75.
And it's a lot of them. I went to, there's an article from Variety from last year that talked about this as they were kicking this off. Basically saying that the Acoustic Sounds is releasing a number of audiophile-oriented releases on 180-gram black vinyl pressed at 45 RPM, including extensive dips into the catalogs of Coltrane, Genesis, Ray Charles, Bad Company, Otis Redding, Buffalo Springfield, and many, many others. Now, for their part, Variety also has a listing of this Atlantic. They're calling it the 75 Remix Collection. Some of the titles that I talked about, the Acoustic Sound selection. I've mentioned Bad Company. Bad Company's on there with a couple of them. Charles Mingus, Yes, with Fragile and Close to the Edge. Foreigner 4. Can you imagine paying, Foreigner 4 and Head Games and Double Vision are $5 albums in our store, typically tops. Yeah. $75 for a pair for those. Dr. John, Stone Temple Pilots on here, and many, many more to come. Now, what's even more interesting, I didn't realize this. This should have been something we covered last year, but here I'm seeing it now. The Analog Production Series that celebrates 75 years of Atlantic Records, they offered a subscription service late last year for this. So that if you wanted to get limited and numbered, the subscription, the top level subscription from Atlantic, they say it ensures exclusivity preserving the sanctity of this unique collection. 180-gram, 45 RPM double LPs, each title meticulously curated and pressed, offering a premium listening experience with expert remastering from the likes of Bernie Grundman, Smith & Gray, Bellman, top-notch pressing at QRP, ensuring unparalleled quality artistic packaging in the old tip-on style double gatefold packages. So their option 1 for subscription on this from Atlantic, you can receive a guaranteed numbered pressing of between 1 and 100, so one of the first 100 of each of these 75 presses, guaranteed from Atlantic. Payment will need to be completed up front, and all sales are final. A one-time payment of $4,560 plus tax.
Oh, well, that's kind of a bargain. Does that include shipping?
No.
Oh,
No, I'm sorry. It does. Free shipping. I'm sorry,
shipping.
Atlantic.
All
Free
right.
shipping.
See? Free shipping.
Option 2 basically guarantees you a number between 101 and 250, and option 3 between 251 and 500 guaranteed. And the price payment was different. It's like $4,300 for the option 2. So
Cash grab. Cash grab.
now here is the trickier part. I'm like, okay, well, how can Rhino, which is a subsidiary of Warner, do this? Obviously, with the packaging and the real cheap printing of the packaging, and Atlantic otherwise. So I thought, well, what the heck? Who owns Atlantic Records? Can you guess who? Warner owns. So they're playing both sides of the coin on this. We want to get these analog production audiophile stuff out to the hardcore collectors who are willing to spend $75 a pop, $150 for these 4 LP ones because they're double LPs, now 4 LPs. And here is Warner and, okay, Rhino, you guys go play with the $20 crowd.
Yeah.
That's a divide I'm not sure I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, and I've heard on various videos, some people are very excited about this Atlantic. They've been buying them, they're just talking them up. This is great, this is fantastic. The Led Zeppelin might have been interesting. But it comes for me to the fact that that's $75 where I could buy a few other albums, that I might want. 45 RPM. Now they're making me get up again. I know we've been hitting the gym really hard lately, but I'm still not ready to be getting up and down off my seat. And that was last year you saw more of this 45 RPM coming out.
It's a pain in the ass.
It is. It really is. And there was albums coming out. They were just, you could have made it in 33 RPM. You would have been fine. But let's make it 2 and charge you twice. And kind of what you're getting there. And if you have that stereo equipment and you have that kind of income, it's not a big deal. That's fine. I just think, for most people, we'll look at that and go, gee whiz, that's cool. But yeah, or the $75 for the Bad Company album, or maybe I could spend $75 on an OG at Radio Wasteland. Yes, there we go.
plug. I don't mean to do that, but yeah. So they're all, Warner, and then I said, okay, well, who owns Warner? And I did a deeper dive, and it's someplace called Access Industries, which is Shutterstock, which is tied into chemical. It's a big company that owns real estate, chemical companies, Warner, and you could just keep going and going on this. But I just found it interesting that the Atlantic high dollar series and the Rhino low dollar stuff is all coming from the same place. But again, maybe that's a smart business move on the part of Warner to say we want to make sure that we're accommodating the more discerning vinyl collector, the audiophile. We'll court them with these big releases. And we're going to try to get more people in because they will eventually become audiophiles.
Well, it's going to take it's going to take the money out of some company's pocket because there's only so much audiophile you could buy, and you have all these other ones that do this too. So someone's going to be paying the price. Eventually, you can't buy them all.
And here's the thing, from the perspective of a record store owner, I'll put that hat back on again. I cannot justify holding stock in the store at $70, $75 price points in the hope that an audiophile will decide it's worth the time to grab it this time when I've got $5 used copies sitting right next to it. That's a tough call for me. And while I'd be more than happy to order stuff for people that want that experience, I don't see as it's something that would be carried in stock. And I don't know how many other record store owners of our size, of our market, would do the same thing.
That's
Detroit, Grand Rapids, I'm sure they're going to hop on stuff like that. But For us, it's just not feasible.
There's a guy down in Arizona, it's called the End Groove, and he has his own videos, and he always shows that high-end stuff, and people are calling in because he ships it all out to them.
Oh yeah.
And he does a big business in it. It's he sells out of it, but that's his market.
Yep, and I don't think I'm at that level yet.
Yeah, not quite. Next year, though, we're talking 2025.
I'm still bringing in crates of Burt Camp. Mitch Miller.
Yes.
Maybe I'll slap a $75 price tag on it after giving it a VPI bath.
Yes. Sometimes that's all it takes. They go, wow, this is a worthwhile one. Then people like me will, okay, I'll buy that.
So I guess that bears watching. I mean, I'd like to be optimistic. I really would like to be optimistic that this is going to be a good move for the industry, but time will tell. And you more than anybody, I think, if you start seeing these in closeout bargain bins online, then we'll know.
Yeah. I tell you, I picked up some great stuff last year because they were just closing them out. It would pop up in my email. Wow.
So if you want a $75 bad company, wait till next December.
Yeah. Yes.
There was one other prediction, I guess, if you wanted to call it a prediction. This is about the safest bet prediction that one could make.
Yeah.
For me, I'm really going out on a limb here to say that I think that in 2024, Taylor Swift is going to continue to do big things.
I think you might. She's not helping the Chiefs much right now, but
is that risky on my part to say?
Yeah. In the major labels, they have what's called the Taylor effect. And what the Taylor effect is right now is she is, in their contracts, they said an artist would have to wait 5 to 7 years to re-release the music. So Taylor Swift now has been, she had it in her contract. She can now do it. So now the record companies have changed this, the Taylor effect, to 10 to 15 years in the contracts before you can re-release the music.
Wow.
Yes.
They've learned their lesson.
That's all part of this coming year that's going to happen. So Taylor had the Taylor effect.
Now, I did do a little reading. I'm not one to go researching Taylor Swift stuff more often, but the Taylor Swift predictors, the professional Swiftie fans that predict stuff, say that she's got 2 more of her albums to turn into Taylor's versions, and then she'll be done. And they expect those to come out in 24. So I think those were covered under the old contract prior to that.
And by that time, then we can do the 20th anniversary of the first album, so we can start hitting all that and give you some extras.
Yeah. And they're expecting at some point she's going to put out another new album of new material, but some of the sites I'd read say they don't expect that until 25, so we'll have to wait for that one, I suppose. One more thing on Taylor Swift, though. A news item that just crossed by us say that she passed up a big record from a bigger star. Have you heard about this?
I have, yes.
Taylor Swift has bypassed a record set by Elvis Presley for the most weeks spent at the top of the Billboard 200 chart for a solo artist.
Incredible.
So she tied Presley last week for 1989 Taylor's version, again, that re-recording version, but that maintained the number spot for one more week and then broke the record like experts predicted that it would. So the record is considered one of Elvis Presley's most notable Billboard chart records, of which he has many. But Swift has now dominated the Billboard charts for a total of 68 weeks during her career per Billboard. So she's passed it up. But that's for a solo artist. She's still not number one when it comes to overall artists. That's still held by the Beatles at 132 weeks on Billboard. And then Swift is at number 2 and Presley now at number 3.
Wow.
So
amazing.
But that's the Swift effect, another version of it.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about where this goes with regards to Elvis, because this was a subject we covered late last year with artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And this is something you see as big and happening in 24 as well?
It is. What I had read right now is some companies, they are loading millions of songs into these computers to see what AI can produce. And because now we'll take all this stuff and AI can come up with this is the perfect song. The thing is, the companies are saying, wait a second, these songs are copyrighted that you're loading into these computers. And so you can't do this. But it's happening right now. And so basically millions of songs, and let AI come up with, this is the perfect song. It'll be kind of interesting to see if it has a good hook.
And on that AI note, and this is another thing I think we kind of predicted during our AI talk, that dead artists would now become a lot more prevalent.
Yep.
This was also from last week, and according to Variety, the king of rock and roll, we were just talking about Elvis, is set to conquer a very new stage. Artificial intelligence, AI, holographic Elvis will be performing in London later this year at a stage show called Elvis Evolution. This is beyond the pale. So according to Variety, the show is being put together by a group called Layered Reality, based out of the UK, that specializes in immersive experiences. Their credits include a recreation of Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, that disco War of the Worlds version, and a few others. They describe this Elvis Evolution, and I'm going to quote Mojo Nixon here and call it Elvis-lution.
Yeah.
A major new show celebrating the world's biggest star stage and screen. It's a jaw-dropping concert performance with a personal invite to an AI after party. So can you meet Elvis after the fact? So they say that Layered Reality's shows blend technology, augmented reality, theater projection, and multi-sensory effects. And Elvis Evolution will also, after the fact, travel to shows in Las Vegas, Berlin, and Tokyo as well.
I was just going, Elvis is back in Vegas, baby. Well, thank you very much.
So, and they say that this can actually, it's not only just locking in, like, oh, here's end of Elvis sitting on his sequin suit. The AI augmented reality projection 3D hologram can project Elvis performing at any stage of his career. And I think that this show is supposed to step him through that career, which is, it's beyond the pale.
So for all these people that every year we have these artists that die and they get very depressed about it. Oh my, we'll never see him in concert. Don't worry. Every one of them eventually will be brought back and you can have a meet and greet.
I can't even imagine. That would be, maybe if you're a huge Elvis fan, this is the pinnacle for you. I get to see him again, but
it depends on how well they do it. And people may go, oh my God, ABBA did it, and I don't know how well those really went. It just kind of scares me, but but wow.
This dovetails onto the discussion we've had before too about how difficult it is watching your favorite artist age. Well, now you don't have to.
Yes. I mean, this is better than Botox.
Great. I really don't know where to go from here, Steve. It's the first episode of the new year, and already I'm kind of speechless with everything we've talked about.
Well, and for all you folks know, this could be AI. we could be AI now.
We could. We're still lounging at home in our pajamas.
Yep.
No, this is really us. I will attest to that. So, right, AI Steve?
Yeah, right. That is correct.
All right. Well, you folks have been listening to a wild start of 24 for Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast. We're just going to have to see where we go from here. I think maybe back to the roots and let's talk about good old vinyl stuff again next. Well, we have been, but let's try not to get too worked up.
I don't know. It's going to be an exciting year of new things, new frontiers.
You folks, as always, have a great one. Please feel free to connect with us on our Facebook page. Just search for Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast. As well, let us know what you're thinking. And is this a good thing, venturing into AI? Is it a good thing that Taylor Swift passed up Elvis?
That's right.
We'll see where we go from there. Okay, Steve, you have a great week, and we'll talk to you next time.
Hey, you also, Jim, and thank you, everyone.